To all those reading this, I am not a sick man. That's what they want you to believe. Who? My superiors. The bosses. The man upstairs in the New York Fire Department who have described me as delusional and suffering from post-traumatic stress. They cannot and will not silence me. I am not delusional nor sick for that matter, but as healthy as any day in my 48 years on this planet. So if they think that by putting me on sick leave, they will stop me from talking, then they're wrong. Very wrong. I warned them. I told them that if they don't listen to me, I would go public. And I guess this is it. I am forced to share my account on the internet because I want answers. I want to get closure on the deaths of my 2 colleagues, 2 of my closest friends who went down with me that night into the Manhattan sewers but did not come back up. I want answers for their families, their wives, and children who need to know the truth about what we saw. I want the public to know about the monster lurking underneath New York streets. And that is why I write now. So let me start from the beginning. 3 months ago, myself, Robson, Matthews, and Johnson were on the night shift when we received a call at 1 a.m. We were already playing ball in the court when the lieutenant came and told us there was someone stuck down a sewer on West 15th Street. He wanted us there ASAP. Exactly 2 minutes and 10 seconds later, we were on the road. Approximately 12 minutes later, we were on the scene. Even though it was early in the morning, the busy Manhattan street was filled with young revelers walking between nearby bars and clubs. Matthews was driving and pulled the fire truck beside the sidewalk. We got out to find 5 college kids standing around an open manhole cover, the rusted grate lying at their feet. "What's the situation here?" I asked upon arrival. Across the street, thumping music spilled out of a club doorway where 2 bouncers stood, watching us, their faces illuminated by the flashing lights of the fire truck. One of the college kids, a girl in a black dress, flicked her cigarette into the shadows and stepped forward. "There's someone stuck down there. We're walking past and heard him calling for help, so we opened the grate." She glanced at the hole. "But a couple of minutes ago, it went quiet, so you might be too late." I nodded and walked over to the manhole. Even in the brightness of nighttime New York, not one ray of light seemed to penetrate through its darkness. The kid stepped back as I stooped down and cocked my head, listening. I could hear nothing but the pulsing nightclub music and the chatter of nearby passerbys. I got my flashlight out and shined it into the hole, scanning around for the person in trouble. It was a typical arch sewer and was about 8 feet down to the water level, which was perhaps a quarter foot in depth. I stuck my head inside and was greeted by the strong stench of sewage. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing around the tunnel. Is anyone down here? I pulled my head back up and glanced at the kids. They shifted their gaze uneasily between one another. I can see no one down there. The girl stepped forward again. We're not lying. We have better things to do with our time. I looked back at my colleagues, waiting by the truck. They all shrugged, awaiting my call. I knew none of them wanted to go down there. I turned back to the manhole cover and called again. Hello? Is anyone down here? I waited, listening, and just about when I was gonna give the kids another look, that said, thanks for wasting my precious time, I heard something. It was faint, very faint, but it came from deep within the tunnels. A whimpering voice that said, I stuck my head back inside. Hey, sir? Are you okay? I looked back at my colleagues. Robson, Matthews, mask up. We're going down. Johnson, you stay here and call for an ambulance. Whoever's stuck down here is going to need one. Johnson nodded. He didn't know at the time, but he was one lucky bastard. The other two would never resurface from that hole. Now, before we proceed with the story, I want to tell you a little bit about New York's sewer system. It dates back to the mid-19th century and is over 6,500 miles in length, which is approximately the distance between Central Park to Alaska and back. Quite the distance, right? Well, let me tell you, in my 25 years serving as a fireman, I've been called to 6 jobs involving the sewers, and I've hated each one. You better believe that underneath our feet is another world. Dark underworld, you might say, filled with rats, cockroaches, and an endless amount of secrets. 6 years ago in Harlem, we pulled an old man out of the sewer. He was half blind, so he hadn't seen the construction work and fell into a manhole. Poor guy. Nearly died. Anyways, I was one of the ones who went down to get him. And I was the only one down there for 15 minutes. But those 15 minutes felt like days. And when you go down there, your mind is like a dog let off the leash, running away with an endless number of what ifs. What if the ceiling collapses? What if the water levels suddenly rise? What if that strange sound you can hear deep inside the tunnel is a monster slowly crawling towards you? And that is what I was thinking when we masked up, ready to descend. Other pedestrians had stopped to join the college kids, and now a whole congregation seemed to be watching in the streets, like a morbid sending-off party. It came with the job. Most people carried on walking when the police were involved, or out of politeness for ambulance crews. But for the fire service, People thought it was a free ticket to the circus. Hey, let's watch Johnny disappear down a black hole. $10 says he never comes back up. That sort of shit. I was forced into the sewers. The water level turned out to be much higher than I had predicted, and came up to my knees. Something I wasn't too pleased about. Floating in the slimy gruel was excrement from who knows how many apartments. The smell was also much stronger down here. Robson and Matthews followed me soon after. Their muttering and cursing, amplified by the brick walls. Puts you off your late night snacks, doesn't it, boys? I joked as we waded towards the bend. He's just around the corner. Let's go. Or so I thought. We stood in a T-junction, scanning each direction to see if we could find anyone. It turned out there was only an endless tunnel stretching off into blackness. Do you hear that? Matthew said. Robson and I turned. Hear what, Matthews? Exactly, Matthews replied. He shined his torch back down towards the manhole where we had descended. I can't hear anything. What happened to the noise outside? We listened. He was right. You couldn't hear anything but our hoarse breathing underneath our masks. That was when the silence was broken by a splashing noise, as if someone or something was moving down there in the darkness. We all jerked around and pointed our torches towards the sound. There was nothing but the rippling sewage water that was returning to stillness. What the fuck was that? Matthews asked, breathing hard. I don't know. Hello? Is anyone down here? Matthews swore loudly. Fuck this. Let's get out of here. This place is giving me the creeps. Robson murmured in agreement. I was about to answer and give them the rant about saving lives when the splashing noise came again. Only this time, it was louder and moving towards us. We all froze. There was something moving down there in the darkness that was difficult to make out and had way too many legs and arms to be human. I cleared my throat, my heart pounding. Okay, guys, let's get out of here. Come on, let's move. The next part, however, still puzzles me the most. We returned to the manhole, or where we thought the manhole would be. We couldn't find it. The ceiling was bricked over, like no entrance had ever existed. Where's it gone? Where is it? Matthews was panicked. He scrambled about the wall as we all searched with our torches for the exit. What's right here? It was right here. Calm down. We probably just went further than you think. Don't worry. It will be here somewhere. Even as I said it, I felt a lurch of fear, and that splashing noise sounded again, closer, like it was turning the corner of the T-junction. Matthew shot me a disgusted look, but remained silent. And with no other option, we continued, trudging onwards, keenly aware of that thing in there with us. We never did find the manhole. It seemed to have vanished, disappeared into the brickwork, as if it never existed. What we did find, however, was a nearby doorway. And to spare you, the listener, the horror of experiencing what I had to, I will keep the description brief. Think of it as an underground operating theater, because that is what we found when we opened the creaking wooden door set into the wall of the sewer. It was a medium-sized chamber, and in the center of the room was an operating table, its surface stained with dried blood. Nearby on a bench lay surgical equipment, scalpels, scissors, syringes. The walls were covered with shelves filled with large jars and containers, each holding human organs, arms, and even heads. But that is not the most shocking part of the room. No. The worst was the mutilated bodies hanging like pig carcasses from chains on the ceilings. There were 8 of them, some with legs missing, other arms. Mostly their faces were intact, frozen in expressions of grotesque terror and agony. We stood there in stunned silence, trying to comprehend the scene. 10 minutes earlier, we were descending into the darkness on the rescue mission. Now, we were witnesses to multiple homicides, or perhaps some twisted experiments gone wrong. Panic began to set in, and Matthews, who had been on the edge since we first entered the sewer, seemed to be on the verge of losing control. We need to get the hell out of here. We need to get out. Robson dropped to his knees and began to vomit. I continued to scan the room until my eyes fell upon a dead body slumped against the stone wall. The dead man was dressed in a white lab coat, and in one hand he held a pistol, which he had used to end his own life. In his other hand, there was a note. I carefully retrieved the note from his hand and began to read. To the person reading this note, beware of the creature in the deep. I am Victor, and he is my monster. Matthews took the note and read it out loud. I am Victor, and he is my monster. What the fuck is that supposed to mean? Victor Frankenstein, I answered, glumly. The doctor in Mary Shelley's book, who creates the monster. Maybe he was doing some experiments down here. I looked at Robson as if to validate my theory. He was deathly pale and looked blankly at me. He did not say a word. And what about that creature in the deep? Is that the thing outside splashing around? How am I supposed to know? All I know is that we need to get the fuck out of here and call the cops and tell them about this freak spaceman down here. Easier said than done, Robson muttered. And I sighed. Well, unless you two want to stay here and wait for that monster to turn up, I suggest we get the fuck out of here. They both looked at the stone floor. No further arguments. Good. I'll go first. Robson in the middle. Matthews, you take the rear. I'm not going at the back. I value my life, alright? Fine. You go first. I'll be at the back. Happy? Good. It really didn't matter who went first, since we were all within an inch of each other as we left the room and headed back into the sewer. That silence was deafening, and as we waded through the murky water, I kept having images of a rotten hand grabbing my leg and dragging me below the surface. We weren't far out of the room when the splashing noise sounded ahead of us. We shined our torches at it, and that's when we saw it. It had a human body. It had 4 arms, 4 legs, giving it the appearance of a spider-human hybrid. Its eyes were bloodshot, and blood dripped down from its mouth as it snarled at us. This must have been the monster. This must have been the abomination. I stood there and just looked at it. I could make out the stitching around the creature's skin, where extra body parts had been sewn onto the joints. There was even a wedding ring still on one of the hands, which glinted in the torchlight. As for its face, it looked human, but at the same time, it wasn't. It had 4 glowing red eyes, almost robotic. Once we were over the sudden shock of seeing this thing, we ran. I think Robson broke out first. Or it might have been me. Hard to recall amidst the chaos. But regardless of who it was, we all turned and fled back towards the operating room as fast as our legs could carry us. I got to the room first, followed by Robson. Matthews, however, fell slightly behind and had barely squeezed inside the door before the snapping jaws of the creature came crashing against it. Once inside, I held the door closed, while Robson and Matthews hauled one of the wooden shelves against it. Afterwards, we collapsed to the floor, shaking. What the fuck are we supposed to do now? Matthews cried. He couldn't hold it any longer. Wait. We wait until they send a team down here to get us. Little did I know, but we were going to wait a long time. It turned out to be more than hours. It might have been days. I can't say. All I do know is that the liquid in the jars, filled with body parts, became more and more appealing during that time. To call us dehydrated would be an understatement. Those heavy fire suits had stripped us of all our fluids, and even stripping down to a t-shirt and underwear. We continued to lose more water due to the stuffiness of the room, and we waited among the mutilated bodies, sharing the place with New York's very own Victor Frankenstein. Though, it must be pointed out, he looked as miserable as us as we waited, praying that a rescue party would be sent down here to save us. Or we could have tried venturing outside again. But would you? I don't think so. Not with that fucking thing crawling out there. During that time, we slept. I don't know how. And I don't know how often. But I remember waking up at some point to find Matthews had cleaned the operating table. He looked cozy, sleeping on the soft padding. I felt irritated. I looked around to see what Robson had claimed, and I couldn't find Robson. I shook Matthews awake, his eyes darting around the room in confusion, before he registered where he was. Robson's gone. What do you mean gone? Matthews asked. His voice was trembling with fear. I mean, he's not here. Matthews got back to his feet. We have to go look for him. We have to, come on. I didn't answer at first, and I realized that Matthews had registered the doubt on my face. Yes, let's go look for him. Opening that door was quite possibly the hardest thing I have ever done. The fear of the unknown weighed on us, and the realization that we might die in this underground maze was a disturbing thought indeed. With flashlights in our hands, we moved forward, calling out for Robson, but there was no sign of Robson. And we would never find any sign of him. And to this day, his body has never been found. Why he left that room, I cannot say. Madness, possibly. I would rather not know. For the knowledge of how Matthews died is torture enough for a lifetime. It was as we went about searching for Robson that Matthews twisted his ankle. He caught his foot in a missing brick, and his screams brought our mission temporarily to a halt. Breathing heavily, I returned to his side. How bad is it? The whiteness in his face told me all I needed to know. He let out a whimper. I can't walk. That's when a guttural sound came from down in the tunnels. It was a low, inhuman growl that seemed to reverb about the walls. Matthews and I exchanged terrified glances. The creature was coming. Instinctively, I stepped back, away from Matthews. Hey, please, don't go. Help me, please. He reached out to me. The growling got louder. Matthew's eyes bulged, his face gleaming with sweat. Help. Fucking help me! It was odd to hear a voice so desperate, so pleading. I was his friend, and he needed me like never before. But what did I do? I continued to inch backwards. He started sobbing. He started pleading. Please don't leave me. Please. Please. Matthews, I'm not leaving you. I tried to say, until he disappeared into the darkness. That's when I turned and ran, listening to his terrifying pleas, calling my name over and over. For another minute, his voice echoed around the sewers. And then came the screams. God, the fucking screams. I can still hear them. And that thing, that beast in this man-headed sewers took him. It ate him alive. The creature laughing because it wanted him to suffer. I never heard its last breath. They found me later on the banks of the Hudson River at low tide, delirious, in need of serious medical attention. They said I was mumbling, "I won't leave you, I won't leave you," repeatedly while they took me away in the ambulance. Help me, please.
you.